And we can just dance the night away until we get no more. I'll shake all the hurt away so you can feel and forget who you used to be. For just tonight, could you just dance the night away?
If you feel guilty after eating when nothing necessarily bad has happened, I want to talk about why that is and why that happens. I'm going to be doing a five-part series on why dieting creates food guilt and why we experience those feelings after eating so often, especially when we're dieting. I want to start today by talking about what guilt is because something common that we struggle with is guilt after eating in ways that we don't want to be eating. So, if I Google guilt, the definition includes a feeling of having done wrong or failed in an obligation. So, basically, guilt shows up because we believe that we've done something wrong or that we've failed in something. And common places guilt can show up with food is, after eating a forbidden food or foods that we determine as something we shouldn't be eating, right? For so many people, when we're dieting, this includes sweets or fast foods or even snacking during the day that can be forbidden. Maybe guilt shows up during or after binging or an episode of maybe overeating or feeling overly stuffed, right? Maybe we have feelings of guilt. Maybe late at night, guilt can show up, or afternoon if we're snacking. Specifically, if we're snacking between meals or after dinner, those are common times for guilt to kind of increase because maybe we believe that we shouldn't have snacks between meals or we shouldn't be eating at night. Guilt can also show up when we're eating socially, right? Eating in front of others, especially at parties or restaurants, that can trigger guilt. And so, if we're trying to follow a diet, you may feel guilty after breaking a rule of the diet you're on, right? We may feel guilty if we violate these rigid eating rules, such as eating outside of set times or consuming specific carbs, right? Because mentally, our actions or the guilt that we feel from these actions can be replayed repeatedly in our heads, or we feel a need to correct what we did by swinging from one end of the spectrum to the other extreme the next day. So, if we feel like we overate the night before and we have a lot of those feelings of guilt, sometimes the next day we can restrict or we can swing from overeating the night before to undereating or restricting a lot more the next day because of those feelings of guilt that we have. So, why is this happening? So, when we're trying to follow rules when we're dieting, we are making these rules or food that we eat mean something to us. So, for example, if we're eating a forbidden food, right, a food that we've deemed as bad or unhealthy, so when we can't avoid these foods forever, right, because restriction increases the food cravings and the food thoughts, and we can't just hold off forever most of the time when we're restricting. So when we can't avoid these foods forever, then we feel like we have failed when we do eat them, or we may feel guilt, right? If we overeat, we may feel guilty because we may feel out of control in those moments. And dieting is all about controlling what we eat, which again, that can trigger guilt because we have failed or we've done something wrong, right? When we're trying to diet and then we mess up or binge on the food that we've been trying to avoid the whole day, right? We did something wrong in our diet, and that can trigger a lot of guilt. Because if dieting is right and what we're supposed to be doing, right, we're all supposed to be dieting. We're supposed to be trying to lose weight. We're supposed to be caring about our health, right? All of these things that we tell ourselves that we're supposed to be doing. Then if we overeat or we binge, like that is bad. And that's what we don't want to be doing. Even excessive snacking can lead to guilt because oftentimes we see snacking as excess calories. And right, we don't want excess calories. And so we're trying to avoid those. And if we don't, we've failed and guilt can show up. Or if we're eating socially, this can trigger guilt because there could be a fear of judgment or almost this self-consciousness that someone else might be judging our body size, our portion size, how we look when we're eating, right? And if there is a right way to lose weight or even a right amount to eat, we could become self-conscious that we're not doing it right or that we're eating more than others, right? And guilt could show up in these social situations when we compare ourselves to others' food choices and the amount that they eat, right? Maybe there's this pressure to eat more in social settings because of what others are saying or encouraging, or maybe even eat less in social settings because of who is around you. And eating socially could also be about past experiences. Like if we have been shamed because of our weight or our food choices in the past, this could create this longer term awareness or guilt about our choices that we make in the future. Or if someone in the past has made comments about the amount that we're eating, we can carry those thoughts or the belief that other people are judging us too, we can carry that into the future. And if you break one of your dieting rules, we may feel guilt after that because following the rules are perceived as good. And so breaking the rules indicate that we have failed the diet or that we've done something wrong. So basically what is happening is that dieting and comparing yourself to others creates this moral value to food, right? So we see foods and actions around eating as either good or bad. And we have been taught that if we're able to eat a certain way or follow a certain eating pattern, we have more discipline. Or if we can't or don't do that, then we lack discipline. So, if our food choices say anything about us and our ability to choose or to be disciplined or not, then our brain is linking our food choices and our actions around eating as the measure of our strength, our discipline, and maybe even our worth. First, the impact is that there is a constant mental noise around food, right? Thinking about the rules that you have to follow, looking at what others are doing or how much others are eating, trying to avoid snacking, keeping track of what you should be eating, what you've already eaten, what maybe you shouldn't be eating, right? The list can go on. Even if you don't break a food rule necessarily, or even if you wake up feeling good about how you feel in the morning, the problem is that we have to eat every day, right? We have to eat 3 times a day, 2 or 3 times a day, every day. There's always a new meal coming up. And so it really is this constant battle to continue following these rules, or it's almost impossible to feel at peace after eating because there's this pressure and this mental workload around following these rules, staying socially acceptable, keeping your discipline high so that you can feel successful with your eating habits to try and avoid guilt. The problem is that this is never ending, and all the rules and the restriction isn't something that's sustained long term, and the this feeling of guilt may be a constant feeling, or the feelings of guilt could come and go depending on your discipline that day, right? And if how we are trying to eat isn't sustainable, we may constantly feel like how we're eating is wrong, we're making poor choices and failing at the rules that we put in place, which just makes us feel bad about ourselves, feel guilty, and feel like we have failed. So let's reframe, right? Guilt isn't proof that you did something wrong, but it's proof that you've been conditioned to believe that, right? Guilt shows up. Sometimes we feel guilty. Maybe we feel guilty for setting a boundary, right? But boundaries are healthy. So it doesn't mean that the boundary is bad. It's just what you believe about that boundary, maybe is what's making you feel guilty. Or your food choices maybe aren't bad, but maybe what you've believed about those food choices, it's what makes you feel bad. So something we can do to practice is that if you are feeling guilty after eating, this is, a good place to start. Start by noticing when you feel guilty and ask yourself, what rule did I just break? Maybe ask yourself, where did I learn that rule? And ask yourself, am I really doing something wrong by eating that? Right? Am I really a worse person because of whatever you are feeling guilty about? Maybe try to separate the food that you're eating from your moral character. So, to end, I want to imagine a future where we can eat without overthinking and we can feel maybe neutral, not good or maybe not bad, but just neutral after meals.